I think I didn't do anything wrong, just asked for a little space. Everyone does that, right? But when the legal documents landed on my kitchen table, I realized my husband had given me all the space in the world, forever. I never thought wanting to explore would cost me everything. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning light filtered through our kitchen window as I sat across from Jonas, watching him methodically eat his cereal. 7 years of marriage had settled into this routine, him reading the news on his tablet, me scrolling through my phone, our daughter Clara humming softly as she drew pictures at the counter. "Jonas," I said, setting down my coffee mug with more force than necessary. "We need to talk." He looked up, those familiar brown eyes meeting mine with the same patient expression he always wore. "What's on your mind, Eirene?" I had rehearsed this conversation in my head for weeks, ever since Liam had started making me feel alive again. "I think I need some space. To explore myself, to grow as a person." Jonas set down his spoon slowly. "Space? What do you mean by space?" "I mean freedom to discover who I am outside of being just a wife and mother. I'm 34, Jonas. I feel like I'm suffocating in this routine." The words came out easier than I expected, though I could see the confusion and hurt creeping across his face. "Suffocating?" His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "I thought we were happy." "We're comfortable," I corrected. "There's a difference. I need to feel excitement again, passion. I need to explore what else is out there for me." Clara looked up from her drawing, sensing the tension. "Mommy, are you okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I said quickly, forcing a smile. "Daddy and I are just talking." Jonas stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the tile floor. "So what exactly are you asking for, Eirene?" "Late nights out? Weekend trips without the family? What kind of exploring are we talking about here?" The suspicion in his voice irritated me. This was exactly the kind of controlling behavior that made me feel trapped. "See, this is what I'm talking about. You immediately assume the worst. I'm talking about personal growth, maybe some social activities, networking events for work. But you're acting like I'm asking to run away and join the circus." "I'm not trying to control you," Jonas said, running his hand through his dark hair. "I'm trying to understand what's changed. Last month you seemed fine, and now you're talking about needing space from our marriage." "Nothing's changed," I lied smoothly. "I've just been thinking about my future, our future. Don't you want me to be happy?" It was a masterful manipulation, and I watched it land exactly as intended. Jonas's shoulders sagged slightly, and that familiar guilt crept into his expression. He never could stand the thought of being the reason for someone's unhappiness. "Of course I want you to be happy," he said softly. "I just don't understand why that means you need space from me." Before I could respond, the back door opened and Jonas's mother, Ruth, walked in, carrying a casserole dish. She had her own key and a habit of dropping by unannounced, which had always annoyed me. "Good morning," she said cheerfully, then stopped when she noticed the tension in the room. "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I interrupting something?" "Not at all," I said quickly, standing up and smoothing my blouse. "Jonas and I were just discussing some changes I'd like to make, nothing major." Ruth's sharp eyes moved between us, and I could see her processing the situation. She'd never particularly liked me, though she'd always been polite about it. Something about her always made me feel like she could see right through me. "What kind of changes?" she asked, setting the casserole on the counter. "Eirene wants some space to explore herself," Jonas said, his voice carefully neutral. Ruth's eyebrows rose slightly. "Explore herself? What does that mean exactly?" I felt my cheeks flush with annoyance. "It means I'd like the freedom to pursue some personal interests without having to check in every 5 minutes. Some independence." "I see," Ruth said slowly. She turned to Jonas. "And how do you feel about this?" "I'm trying to be supportive," Jonas replied, though I could hear the strain in his voice. If Eirene needs space, then I guess we'll figure out how to make that work. Ruth nodded, but I caught the warning look she gave Jonas. It was subtle, but I saw it, the slight tightening around her eyes, the way she pressed her lips together. She suspected something, and that made me nervous. Well, Ruth said finally, I suppose everyone needs different things in a marriage. Just remember that some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. The cryptic comment hung in the air as she kissed Clara goodbye and headed for the door. I'll see you all Sunday for dinner, she called over her shoulder. After she left, Jonas turned back to me. So, what exactly are you proposing? I had my answer ready. Just some evenings out, maybe a girls' night here and there, some work events that run late, nothing dramatic. Work events? Jonas frowned. Since when do you have work events that run late? Since I started taking my career more seriously, I snapped. God, Jonas, you're proving my point. You question everything I do. Maybe if you showed a little more interest in your own life instead of monitoring mine, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It was unfair, and I knew it. Jonas worked hard as an accountant, provided well for our family, and had never been anything but supportive. But I needed him to back down, to give me the freedom I wanted without asking too many questions. I'm not monitoring you, he said quietly. I'm your husband. I care about what's happening in your life. Caring and controlling are two different things, I replied, gathering my purse and keys. I'm going to be late for work. Can we table this for now? Jonas nodded, though I could see he wasn't satisfied with how the conversation had ended. Sure. We'll talk more tonight. As I headed for the door, I pulled out my phone and quickly sent a text. Talk to Jay. Think he'll give me space. Can we meet for lunch today? The response came back almost immediately. Absolutely. Can't wait to see you. I smiled as I slipped the phone back into my purse. Liam understood me in ways Jonas never had. He made me feel young and desirable again, like I was worth pursuing. What Jonas didn't know wouldn't hurt him, and what I was doing wasn't really wrong. It was just exploring, like I'd told him. Behind me, I heard Jonas moving around the kitchen, probably cleaning up breakfast and getting Clara ready for school, like he did every morning. The routine that had once felt comforting now felt suffocating. I was ready for something more exciting, something that made my heart race the way Liam did. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Jonas watching me through the window. There was something different in his expression, something I couldn't quite read. But I pushed the thought away. He'd come around eventually. He always did. What I didn't know was that Jonas had already noticed the late-night texts, the new clothes, the extra attention to my appearance. And unlike me, Jonas was the kind of man who paid attention to details. The Riverside Cafe buzzed with the familiar chatter of our monthly friend group brunch. I had suggested the gathering, needing to maintain appearances and show everyone that Jonas and I were just fine. Better than fine, actually. I was thriving in my newfound independence. So, Eirene, laughed Michelle, stirring sugar into her coffee. Jonas looks like he's been hit by a truck lately. You keeping him up all night? The table erupted in knowing chuckles, and I felt a rush of power. This was my chance to control the narrative, to paint myself as the vibrant wife with the boring husband, rather than the cheating wife with the devoted husband. Oh, you know Jonas, I said with an exaggerated eye roll. He's been extra clingy lately. I told him I needed a little space to pursue some interests, and he's been moping around like a lost puppy ever since. Space? Asked David, Michelle's husband. What kind of space? Just some freedom to be myself again. You know how it is, marriage, kids, routine. Sometimes a girl needs to remember she's more than just a wife and mother. I took a sip of my mimosa, enjoying the sympathetic nods from the other women. Jonas shifted uncomfortably beside me. I wouldn't say I'm moping. Oh, honey, I interrupted with a laugh, placing my hand on his arm in a gesture that looked affectionate but felt patronizing. You've been asking me 20 questions every time I leave the house. Where are you going? When will you be back? Who are you meeting? It's like having a second father. The group laughed again, but I noticed Tom, Jonas's older brother, wasn't smiling. He was studying his brother's face with concern. Maybe he just cares about you, suggested Lisa, though her tone was more curious than supportive. Of course he cares, I said quickly, but there's a difference between caring and being possessive. I mean, the other night I came home from a work event at 10 o'clock, a perfectly reasonable time, and he was sitting in the dark waiting for me like some kind of detective. It was midnight, Jonas said quietly, and you said the event ended at 9. The correction hung in the air for a moment, and I felt my cheeks flush. See what I mean? I said with forced lightness. He keeps track of everything I say, like he's building a case against me. Building a case? Tom spoke up, his voice sharp. Jonas, are you building a case against your wife? Jonas looked around the table, clearly uncomfortable with being the center of attention. I just worry when Eirene is out late and doesn't answer her phone. Is that so wrong? You called me 6 times, I said, my voice rising slightly. 6 times, Jonas. At a work function. Do you know how embarrassing that was? I called twice, Jonas corrected again, his voice still quiet but firmer now. And you didn't answer either time. I felt my phone buzz against my leg and discreetly checked it under the table. A text from Liam. Missing you. When can we meet again? My heart fluttered, and I quickly typed back. Soon. At brunch with friends right now. Everything okay? Asked Michelle, noticing my distraction. Oh, just work stuff, I said, slipping the phone back into my purse. See, Jonas, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Even at a social gathering, work doesn't stop. But some people don't understand that careers require dedication and networking. The dig was subtle but clear, and I saw Jonas's jaw tighten. Good. Maybe if he felt a little embarrassed, he'd stop questioning my every move. What kind of networking are you doing? Asked David. I thought you worked in HR. I do, but there are always industry events, professional development opportunities, cross-departmental collaborations. The business world doesn't shut down at 5 o'clock. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Liam. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You're incredible. I smiled despite myself, then caught Ruth watching me from across the table. Jonas's mother had arrived late and taken the last seat, directly in my line of sight. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. You seem very happy about that work message, she observed. I just got confirmation about a project I've been working on, I lied smoothly. It's nice when hard work pays off. Ruth nodded slowly, but her expression remained skeptical. I'm sure it is. The conversation moved on to other topics, but I noticed Jonas had grown increasingly quiet. When Michelle started telling a story about her husband forgetting their anniversary, I saw my opportunity to lighten the mood. At least your husband has passion, I said with a laugh. Jonas is so predictable, I could set my watch by him. Same breakfast every morning, same route to work, same bedtime routine. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to a robot. The comment got the laugh I was hoping for, but when I looked at Jonas, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not hurt, not embarrassment, but something colder, something calculating. You're right, he said quietly. I am predictable. I come home when I say I will. I answer my phone when my wife calls. I tell the truth about where I've been. Very boring traits. The table fell silent. The implication was clear, and I felt a moment of panic. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. Jonas, I said with forced lightness, you're killing the mood. We're just having fun. Am I? He asked, his brown eyes meeting mine directly. Because it doesn't feel fun to me. It feels like I'm being made into a joke for the entertainment of our friends. Tom leaned forward. Maybe we should... No, it's fine, Jonas said, standing up. Eirene wants space, and clearly she needs space from me right now too. I think I'll head home and check on Clara. He pulled out his wallet and placed enough cash on the table to cover both our meals, then leaned down to kiss my cheek. To everyone else, it probably looked like a normal goodbye. But when his lips brushed my ear, he whispered, We need to talk tonight. After he left, the mood at the table shifted. Ruth excused herself shortly after, giving me a look that could have frozen fire. Tom made polite conversation for a few more minutes before leaving as well. "Wow," said Michelle once the family members were gone. "That was intense." "Jonas has been under a lot of stress lately," I said, trying to salvage the situation. "Work stuff. He'll be fine." But even as I said it, I felt unsettled. Jonas had never challenged me publicly before, never made me look bad in front of our friends. The quiet, predictable man I'd married was showing a backbone I didn't know he had. My phone buzzed again, and this time I didn't bother hiding my smile as I read Liam's message. "Free this afternoon? I have some ideas for how we could spend the time." "Actually," I said, standing up and grabbing my purse, "I just remembered I have some errands to run. Thanks for organizing this, Michelle. Same time next month." As I walked to my car, I felt a mixture of excitement about seeing Liam and annoyance about Jonas's behavior. He was supposed to be the understanding husband who gave me space, not the suspicious spouse who made scenes at brunch. But as I drove toward my afternoon rendezvous, I couldn't shake the image of Jonas's face when he'd stood up to leave. There had been something different there, something that made me wonder if my predictable husband might be full of surprises after all. What I didn't know was that Jonas had spent the morning before brunch doing something very unpredictable indeed, visiting a lawyer to understand his options, and the cash he'd left on the table. He'd made sure to get a receipt. The fluorescent lights of my office building hummed overhead as I made my way to the elevator Monday morning, my heart racing with anticipation. 3 floors up, Liam would already be at his desk in the marketing department, probably thinking about our afternoon together yesterday, just like I was. "Morning, Eirene," called Janet from reception. "You're glowing today. Good weekend?" "The best," I replied, unable to suppress my smile. Sometimes you just need to do something that makes you feel alive again. I'd spent 2 hours with Liam at his apartment yesterday, and every minute had been electric. He made me feel beautiful, desired, important, everything Jonas had stopped making me feel years ago. When Liam looked at me, I wasn't just a wife or a mother or an HR administrator. I was a woman worth pursuing. My phone buzzed as I settled at my desk. A text from Jonas. "Hope you have a good day at work. Will you be home for dinner?" I stared at the message, irritated by its mundane domesticity. After our tense exchange at brunch yesterday, he was back to his usual routine of checking in on me. I typed back, "Probably late tonight. Big project due this week." It wasn't entirely a lie. There was a project due, though it wouldn't require me to stay late. But Liam had mentioned wanting to see me again soon, and I needed to keep my options open. Around 10 o'clock, I made my way to the break room, timing it perfectly to coincide with Liam's usual coffee break. He was there waiting, looking handsome in his navy suit and tie. "Good morning, beautiful," he said quietly, moving to stand beside me at the coffee machine. "I can't stop thinking about yesterday." "Neither can I whispered back, my pulse quickening. "When can we see each other again?" "What about tonight? I could make dinner at my place." The offer was tempting, but I needed to be careful. I told Jonas I'd be working late, but I should probably show my face around here for a while to make it believable. Liam nodded, understanding. "Smart thinking. We can't be too careful, especially with office gossip." "Has anyone said anything?" I asked, suddenly worried. "Nothing specific, but Karen from accounting mentioned seeing us talking a lot lately. I told her we were collaborating on the employee satisfaction survey." I felt a flutter of anxiety. The employee satisfaction survey had been completed months ago, but hopefully Karen wouldn't remember that detail. "Maybe we should be more discreet here," I suggested. "Probably a good idea," Liam agreed, then leaned closer. "But I hate having to pretend I don't want to touch you every time I see you." His words sent a thrill through me, and I had to resist the urge to reach out and straighten his tie. This was what I'd been missing: passion, desire, the feeling of being wanted. "Tonight then?" I asked. "Definitely. I'll text you my address." We parted ways, returning to our respective departments. I spent the morning working on actual HR tasks, but my mind kept wandering to the evening ahead. Around noon, my phone rang. Eirene Voss speaking. "Hi, honey, it's me." Jonas's voice sounded tired. "I just wanted to check about tonight. Should I wait dinner for you?" "Don't wait," I said, injecting false regret into my voice. "This project is turning into a nightmare. I'll probably grab something from the vending machine and work through dinner." "That doesn't sound healthy. Why don't I bring you something? I could swing by around 7 with some takeout." Panic shot through me. "No, I mean, that's sweet, but I'll be in meetings most of the evening. Very boring stuff. Budget reviews and compliance reports. You'd just be sitting around waiting for me." "I don't mind waiting." His persistence was starting to annoy me. "Jonas, I appreciate the thought, but I need to focus tonight. No distractions, okay? I'll grab something on the way home." There was a pause before he responded. "Okay, what time do you think you'll be home?" "Late. Don't wait up." After I hung up, I felt a mixture of guilt and irritation. Jonas was being thoughtful, but his timing was terrible. Couldn't he see that I needed space to handle my work responsibilities? The fact that those responsibilities now included Liam wasn't really the point. The afternoon dragged by slowly. I found myself checking the clock every few minutes, counting down until I could leave. Around 4:30, my sister Elena called. "Hey, how's the new independent Eirene doing?" she asked cheerfully. "Better than ever," I said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I'm actually going out tonight. A work thing, but still." "Good for you. Jonas needs to understand that you're not just his property. You're a vibrant, interesting woman with your own life." Elena had always been my biggest supporter in this. At 30, she was still single and living what she called her best life. Dating, traveling, pursuing her art career. She thought Jonas was boring and had never understood why I'd settled down so young. "He's been extra clingy lately," I confided, "always asking where I'm going, when I'll be back. It's suffocating." "That's what happens when you let a man get too comfortable," Elena said. "They start thinking they own you. You're doing the right thing by establishing some independence." Her validation felt good, even though she didn't know the full story. Elena saw my marriage as a trap I needed to escape from, but she didn't understand that I wasn't trying to escape. I was just trying to have everything I wanted. At 5:30, I began preparing to leave. I touched up my makeup, spritzed on some perfume, and changed from my sensible flats into the heels I kept under my desk. As I was gathering my things, my phone buzzed with a text from Liam. "Can't wait to see you. Wine is chilling." I smiled and typed back, "On my way." But as I walked toward the elevator, I ran into my father in the lobby. Paul worked for a law firm in the same building, and occasionally our paths crossed. "Eirene," he called out, looking pleased to see me. "Working late tonight?" "Something like that," I said, hoping he wouldn't notice my evening makeup and heels. "How are things at home?" Jonas seemed a little stressed when I saw him at the hardware store yesterday. My father had always liked Jonas, which had sometimes annoyed me. He thought my husband was steady and reliable, qualities he valued highly after my mother had left him for a more exciting man when I was 16. "He's fine," I said quickly, "just busy with work." "And Clara? I haven't seen my granddaughter in a while." "She's great, growing like a weed." I glanced at my watch pointedly. "I really need to run, Dad. This meeting starts in 20 minutes. "Of course. But Eirene," he placed a gentle hand on my arm, "if you ever need to talk about anything, marriage stuff, life stuff, you know I'm here, right?" There was something in his tone that made me look at him more carefully. "What do you mean?" "Nothing specific. Just that marriage is hard work and sometimes people make choices they regret. I'd hate to see you go through what your mother and I went through." His words sent a chill through me. "Everything's fine, Dad. Jonas and I are just figuring out how to give each other some space. It's healthy." He nodded, but I could see the concern in his eyes. Just remember that some spaces become permanent if you're not careful. As I drove to Liam's apartment, my father's words echoed in my mind, but I pushed them away, focusing instead on the excitement of the evening ahead. I wasn't my mother, and this wasn't the same situation. I was just exploring, just trying to feel alive again. There was nothing wrong with that. What I didn't know was that Jonas had indeed been to the hardware store yesterday, but not to buy hardware. He'd gone to meet with a private investigator my father had recommended, someone who specialized in matrimonial cases, and the project I'd claimed would keep me busy all week. Jonas had already called my office to verify the deadline. There was no project due this week. I stood in our kitchen Thursday evening, surveying the dinner I'd prepared with unusual care. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, all of Jonas's favorites. Clara had helped me set the table with our good china, and I'd even lit candles. After a week of tension and careful maneuvering around my evening activities, I needed to show Jonas that I was still committed to our family. "This looks amazing, Mom," Clara said, arranging the napkins just so. "Are we celebrating something?" "Just celebrating us," I replied, smoothing her dark hair. "Sometimes families need special dinners for no reason at all." The truth was, I was feeling guilty about Tuesday night. I'd told Jonas I was working late again, but I'd spent 3 hours at Liam's apartment, losing myself in conversation and kisses that made me feel like a teenager again. When I'd finally come home at 11:30, Jonas had been waiting in the living room with a cup of cold coffee and questions I'd deflected with claims about budget meetings and compliance reviews. I'd invited Ruth and Tom for tonight's dinner, hoping to create a warm family atmosphere that would smooth over any lingering tension. But as 6 o'clock approached, I was beginning to wonder if it had been a mistake. Jonas arrived home exactly on time, as always. He paused in the doorway of the kitchen, taking in the elaborate spread. "What's the occasion?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "No occasion. I just thought it would be nice to have a family dinner. Ruth and Tom should be here any minute." Something flickered across Jonas's face. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. "You invited my family?" "Our family," I corrected. "I know things have been a little tense lately, and I thought this might help us reconnect." Jonas nodded slowly, but he didn't look convinced. He'd been different all week, quieter than usual, more watchful. Sometimes I caught him studying me with an expression I couldn't read. The doorbell rang, and Clara ran to answer it. Ruth entered first, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Tom followed, looking uncomfortable. "This is lovely, Eirene," Ruth said, surveying the dining room. "What a nice surprise." We gathered around the table, and for the first 20 minutes, conversation flowed normally. Clara chatted about school, Tom shared stories from his job at the construction company, and I felt myself relaxing. This was working. We looked like a normal, happy family. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at it discreetly, expecting a work email or a message from Elena. Instead, I saw Liam's name and felt my heart skip. "Missing you already. Can't wait for tomorrow night." I quickly turned the phone face down, but not before Ruth's sharp eyes caught the movement. "Work calling?" she asked innocently. "Just a reminder about tomorrow's meeting," I lied, forcing a smile. "You know how it is. The office never really closes." "Seems like you've been having a lot of evening meetings lately," Tom observed. "Must be a busy time in HR." "Very busy," I agreed, taking a large sip of wine. "Lots of new initiatives, cross-departmental collaboration. It's actually quite exciting." Jonas set down his fork. "What kind of initiatives?" The question caught me off guard. Jonas rarely asked about my work in detail. "Oh, employee engagement programs, process improvements. Nothing you'd find interesting." "Try me," he said quietly. "I'd like to hear about what's keeping my wife out so many evenings." There was something in his tone that made everyone at the table look up. Clara paused mid-bite, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "It's really quite boring," I said with a forced laugh. Technical stuff, about compliance and reporting structures. With which department? Jonas pressed. Maybe I know someone there. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. Marketing mostly. They're revamping their employee satisfaction protocols. Interesting, Ruth said slowly. I thought you finished the employee satisfaction survey months ago. My wine glass froze halfway to my lips. How did Ruth know about that? This is a follow-up project, I said quickly, building on the initial findings. Jonas was watching me intently now, and I realized I'd made a mistake. He knew I was lying. I could see it in his eyes. Well, Tom said, clearly trying to change the subject, this roast is delicious, Eirene. You've outdone yourself. Thank you, I managed, grateful for the redirect. But Jonas wasn't finished. So these marketing meetings, are they with the whole department or just specific team members? Jonas, I said sharply, why the interrogation? I'm trying to have a nice family dinner, and you're acting like I'm on trial. I'm just interested in your work, he replied calmly. You seem so passionate about these new projects. I'd love to hear more. His persistence was making me angry. This was exactly the kind of controlling behavior I'd been complaining about. If you must know, I've been working primarily with Liam Dorsey from marketing. He's leading the Employee Engagement Initiative. The name hung in the air, and I immediately regretted saying it. Jonas's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Liam Dorsey, he repeated slowly, and these meetings run quite late. Sometimes, I said defensively. Good work doesn't follow a 9-to-5 schedule. Clara looked between her parents, her young face creased with worry. Are you guys fighting? No, sweetheart, I said quickly, reaching over to squeeze her hand. Daddy's just curious about Mummy's work. But the damage was done. The warm family atmosphere I'd tried to create had evaporated, replaced by tension thick enough to cut. Ruth cleared her throat. Perhaps we should talk about something else. Actually, Jonas said, standing up slowly, I think there's something we should discuss first. He walked to the kitchen and returned carrying a manila folder. My blood ran cold as he set it on the table beside my plate. What's that? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. Just some paperwork, Jonas said quietly. Things I thought the family should know about. Tom leaned forward, frowning. Jonas, what's going on? Clara, Jonas said gently, why don't you go upstairs and get ready for your bath? The grown-ups need to talk. Our daughter looked between us, confusion and fear evident in her eyes. But I'm not finished eating. You can come back down for dessert later, Ruth said kindly, helping Clara from her chair. I'll come up and read you a story in a few minutes. After Clara left, Jonas opened the folder. I caught glimpses of papers, photographs, what looked like phone records. Jonas, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. What is this? This, he said calmly, is the truth about your evening meetings. He pulled out a photograph, a security camera image of me entering an apartment building I recognized immediately. Liam's building. This is from Tuesday night, Jonas continued, his voice steady and controlled. The same night you told me you were working late on compliance reports. I felt the world tilting around me. You had me followed. I had my wife's activities documented, he corrected. There's a difference. Tom was staring at the photograph, understanding dawning on his face. Ruth sat perfectly still, her lips pressed into a thin line. Jonas, I can explain. Can you? He pulled out more papers. Can you explain why your phone records show dozens of calls and texts to Liam Dorsey at all hours? Can you explain why you've been using our joint credit card to buy lingerie and perfume? Can you explain why you've lied to me every single day for the past month? The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. I felt tears starting to form, but I also felt anger rising. How dare he spy on me? How dare he humiliate me in front of his family? You had no right, I said, my voice shaking with rage. No right to invade my privacy like this. Privacy? Jonas's calm facade finally cracked. You're my wife, Eirene. We promised to be faithful to each other. What privacy did you think you had to cheat on me? I wasn't cheating, I protested, though the words sounded hollow even to me. It was just exploring, just trying to find myself. By sleeping with another man. The blunt question hung in the air. I looked around the table, at Tom's shocked face, at Ruth's disappointment, at the evidence spread before me. You're tearing our family apart, I said desperately. Clara needs both her parents. We can work through this. You tore our family apart the moment you decided your marriage vows were negotiable, Jonas replied. I'm just documenting the damage. He closed the folder and stood up. Ruth, Tom, I'm sorry you had to see this, but I wanted family to understand what's been happening before things go any further. Go any further? I asked, fear creeping into my voice. Jonas looked at me with eyes that held no warmth, no love, no forgiveness. I'll be staying at my mother's house. My lawyer will be in touch. As he walked toward the stairs, probably to pack a bag and say goodbye to Clara, I realized that my perfect plan had crumbled completely. The space I'd asked for had become a chasm, and I was standing on the wrong side of it, completely alone. The law offices of Peterson and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of downtown's tallest building. As I sat in the plush waiting area, my hands trembling slightly as I clutched my purse, I couldn't believe my life had come to this. 2 weeks had passed since Jonas walked out of our house with that damning folder, and now I was here to face whatever legal nightmare he'd constructed. Mrs. Voss, a young paralegal appeared at my elbow. Mr. Peterson will see you now. I followed her down a hallway, lined with law books and diplomas, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Jonas sitting beside a distinguished older man in an expensive suit. My husband looked different, more composed, more determined than I'd ever seen him. Eirene, Jonas said quietly as I entered, thank you for coming. Like I had a choice, I replied, taking the seat across from him. Your lawyer's letter was pretty clear about the consequences of not showing up. Mr. Peterson, a silver-haired man with kind but sharp eyes, opened a thick file. Mrs. Voss, I'm David Peterson. I represent your husband in this matter. We've asked you here today to discuss the terms of a separation agreement. Separation? I felt a flutter of hope. So we're not talking about divorce. We're talking about legal separation, with the option to proceed to divorce, Peterson clarified. Your husband is prepared to offer you certain considerations if you agree to specific terms. I looked at Jonas, searching his face for any sign of the man I'd married. Jonas, can't we just talk about this, alone? We don't need lawyers and legal agreements. We can work this out. I tried talking, Jonas said quietly. For weeks, I tried talking. You lied to me every single time. Peterson slid a document across the table. These are the proposed terms. I'll give you a moment to review them. As I read, my heart sank further with each paragraph. Jonas was seeking primary custody of Clara, with supervised visitation for me until I completed counseling. He wanted me out of the house within 30 days. He was freezing our joint accounts and credit cards, leaving me access to only my own salary. This is insane, I said, looking up at Peterson. You can't just kick me out of my own home and take my daughter away from me. Actually, Peterson said calmly, given the documented evidence of adultery and the instability it's created in the household, these terms are quite reasonable. Instability? What instability? Jonas spoke for the first time since I'd sat down. Clara's been having nightmares since I moved out. She's been asking me why Mommy doesn't love Daddy anymore. She drew a picture at school of our family, and I wasn't in it. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's not... I never said I didn't love you. Didn't you? Jonas pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. This is a voicemail you left for Liam last Thursday. My own voice filled the room, breathy and intimate. I can't wait to see you tonight. Jonas is working late, so we'll have plenty of time. I'm so tired of pretending to be happy in this boring marriage. You make me feel alive again. I felt my cheeks burn with shame and anger. You recorded my private conversations. I documented evidence of adultery, Peterson corrected, which is relevant in custody determinations. I want my own lawyer, I said desperately. Of course, Peterson agreed. That's your right, but I should mention that Mr. Voss has been quite generous in these terms. If this matter proceeds to contested divorce proceedings, the settlement could be considerably less favorable to you. I stared at the papers, the legal language blurring through my tears. Jonas, please. I made a mistake. Can't we go to counseling? Can't we try to fix this? For a moment, something softened in Jonas's expression, but then he straightened his shoulders and looked directly at me. You asked for space to explore yourself, he said quietly. You told me you felt suffocated by our marriage. You said I was boring and predictable. Well, congratulations, Eirene. You're about to get all the space you ever wanted. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Jonas leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you meant exactly that. You wanted freedom from your marriage vows, freedom from accountability, freedom from consequences. The only problem is, freedom goes both ways. Peterson cleared his throat. Mrs. Voss, you have 72 hours to respond to this proposal. After that, we'll file for divorce and pursue full custody through the courts. Full custody? I felt panic rising in my chest. You can't take Clara away from me completely. We're not taking her away, Jonas said. We're protecting her from further emotional damage while you figure out what you actually want from your life. I looked between the two men, realizing that this wasn't a negotiation, it was a surrender demand. Jonas had outmaneuvered me completely, gathering evidence while I'd been lost in my fantasy with Liam. What about Liam? I asked desperately. Are you going after him too? Mr. Dorsey has been informed that his relationship with you contributed to the breakdown of a marriage and the emotional distress of a minor child, Peterson said. He's been advised to cease all contact with you. My heart sank. He agreed to that? Jonas's expression was grim. He agreed very quickly, actually. Apparently, your relationship wasn't as meaningful to him as it was to you. The final blow landed with devastating precision. Not only was I losing my husband and my daughter, but the man I'd risked everything for had abandoned me the moment things got complicated. I need time to think, I whispered. 72 hours, Peterson repeated. After that, we proceed with litigation. As I stood to leave, Jonas called my name. I turned, hoping for some sign of mercy, some indication that the man I'd married was still in there somewhere. Eirene, he said quietly, I want you to know that I loved you. I loved you enough to give you the space you asked for, even when I suspected what you were really doing. I loved you enough to try to save our marriage, even after I had proof of your affair. But I love Clara more than I love you, and I won't let her grow up thinking that betrayal and lies are normal parts of marriage. His words were like a knife twisting in my chest. As I walked out of that conference room, I realized that I'd lost more than my marriage. I'd lost my family, my home, my security, and my self-respect. The space I'd asked for had become a chasm, and I was falling into it alone. But the worst part was yet to come. As I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Just heard from Ruth about the legal stuff. Dad wants to talk to you ASAP. This is bad, Eirene. Really bad. I had no idea how bad it was about to get. The family courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with wood-paneled walls and fluorescent lighting that cast everything in harsh relief. I sat beside my court-appointed attorney, watching as Jonas and his legal team arranged their documents with methodical precision. 3 months had passed since that devastating meeting at Peterson's office, and today would determine the final terms of our divorce. I tried to fight it, hired a lawyer, contested custody, demanded my share. But Ethan had prepared for everything. Every text, every purchase, every lie, documented and ready. Mrs. Voss, Judge Williams said, her eyes sharp, You claim this was a lapse in judgment. The evidence shows months of deliberate deception. You didn't make one mistake. You made hundreds. Each word hit like a blow. When she announced that Jonas would get primary custody and 70% of the assets, I stopped breathing. I'd lose my daughter, my home, my stability. No spousal support, just consequences. As the gavel fell, the life I'd built shattered. Jonas approached only to say, "Clara's recital is next Friday. You can come, but don't try to take her home." Then he walked away. Outside, I sat in my car staring at the decree. My marriage reduced to legal language and loss. I texted Elena, "It's over." But it wasn't. It was the beginning of the life I'd chosen when I decided my vows were negotiable. 6 months later, I saw Jonas, Clara, and Ruth at the school play. Smiling, whole, healed. Clara waved politely but didn't run to me. I'd asked for space, and now I had it, endless and empty. The judge's words echoed. Your actions have consequences, and some, I realized, last a lifetime. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching,